World of Warcraft has seen some very dark times. Content droughts, design fiascos, scandals, systems too complex for their own good, and radio silence as community engagement hits an all-time low. And now Final Fantasy XIV and other competitors are closing in. But I don't think this has to be the end of the story for World of Warcraft. What World of Warcraft needs is simpler systems, more content, better community engagement so that the dev teams know what will get players excited to pick up World of Warcraft again. To that end, I have invented a system of my own, a simple system that gives players huge amounts of customization, that lets developers add awesome and useful abilities without fear of spellbar bloat, giving players the ability to upgrade 3 of their spells to be something new. I'm cooking up concepts for 7 of these upgrade spells for every spec. Some of them are returning favorites, some of them are brand new. Either way, Blizzard has my express permission to use every concept I post about in these videos in the comments or on the forums. And if the Blizzard developers are too pressed for time to engage with the community, then I will. I'll get the feedback on this concept, and even if they don't take a single one of my ideas, they'll know what the players want, and most importantly, why. And they can use that to make the game better, because I want this game better. I want WoW to last another decade. Enhancement felt like it was easy for me to cook up upgrades for. Considering that this is coming from a holy paladin who's never tried Enhancement to the best of my knowledge, that makes me wonder if it was too easy. I mean, I went into Project Decade expecting to make mistakes. Heck, I suspect I easily could have made a few mistakes with my spread of upgrades for Holy Paladins. But knowing I am fallible makes me constantly ask for feedback so I can hear from players what I should have done and make future iterations the best they can be. I'm also going to be very stream of consciousness-y about what I'm thinking and why I made the upgrades that I did because, again, I know I'm fallible, and being open and honest about my thought process allows you, the givers of feedback, to know exactly where I went wrong and why, and it makes it easier for you to get me off the wrong track and onto the right one. Plus, I hope the habit of being this open and honest rubs off onto Blizzard. Even saying your goals and priorities out loud can sometimes help you examine whether those are the goals and priorities you should have. Let's face it, sometimes Blizzard's goals and priorities are wrong, like putting design goals ahead of the fun factor, and the game has suffered for it multiple times. So getting Blizzard to get Gabby is a good goal, so here I go, a-leadin' by example. That's probably enough intro. Let's get into the upgrade spread I have for Enhancement for Iteration 1, so you can tell me whether what I was thinking was any good. First, we have Earthstrike, an upgrade for Stormstrike that deals nature damage and is guaranteed to proc Maelstrom Weapon. Second, we have Firestorm Shock, an upgrade for Flame Shock that applies the Flame Shock damage over time to multiple targets, albeit at a reduced duration. Third, we have Lightning Shock, an upgrade for Crash Lightning that hits a single target and then boosts the single target damage of Storm Strike and Lava Lash. Third, Frostfire Shock. Don't worry, not every one of these upgrades is a shock spell, but Frostfire Shock is an upgrade for Frost Shock that has no cooldown and no slow. It deals less damage than Frost Shock, but more than Flame Shock's upfront damage, and it extends the duration of the Flame Shock damage over time when you cast it. Fifth, we have Tide Rush Weapon, an upgrade for Wind Fury that deals multi-target damage as frost damage. Sixth, we have Lightning Bolt Volley, an upgrade for Chain Lightning that hits more targets, deals slightly less damage than Chain Lightning would do to its initial target. Finally, we have Frostmend, an upgrade for Healing Surge that generates 2 Maelstrom weapon stacks when used to heal a target. It's also instant cast. Now for the thinking. I added quite a few upgrades in Elemental that, if you choose to equip them, sacrificed single target damage for multi-target damage. And I wanted to try the reverse for Enhancement, so I added an upgrade for Crash Lightning that was single target. You know, there's a funny observation that I made about the way World of Warcraft was designed back in 2004. I believe it was based largely off of Diablo 2. In fact, I have a whole video about that in my channel that I made a few years ago. There's a link in the description if you are feeling curious, but I noticed that in Diablo 2, the developers went all out with the fire, ice, and lightning trope. Sorceresses had fire, ice, and lightning skill trees. Paladins had fire, ice, and lightning resistance auras, and damage auras for that matter. And in general, it felt like every chance they could, the Diablo 2 developers loved to juxtapose fire, ice, and lightning together. But then in World of Warcraft, it felt like every chance they could, the developers would avoid juxtaposing fire, ice, and lightning together. And for some reason, lightning was the one they always booted out. Paladins had fire, frost, and shadow resistance auras, and no damage auras, grumble, grumble. Shaman had fire, frost, and earth shock. Mages had fire, frost, and arcane talent trees. You get the idea. So here I am adding lightning shock where the 2004 developers wouldn't. Just a funny little observation I wanted to throw in there. Anyhow, the goal with lightning shock was to trade multi-target damage for single-target damage, allowing you to spec yourself out with the upgrade system to emphasize single-target damage if you wanted, or multi-target damage if you wanted. And of course, since I made the upgrades to be the polar opposite of conduits and covenants, I set up upgrades so that you can swap out which 3 upgrades you have equipped anytime you're out of combat, so it's very fluid. I also noticed that Stormstrike didn't deal nature damage unless it was buffed by another ability, so I added an upgrade that allows Stormstrike to take more advantage of Enhancement's mastery. It's not like I could do an upgrade for Stormstrike or Lava Lash that was multi-target. Crash Lightning was already doing that. But then I realized that just deals more damage and has no nuance other than that isn't so interesting, so I decided to throw in that it's guaranteed to proc Maelstrom Weapon to try to make things more interesting. Now that I think about it, that has a chance of altering your rotation if you know you can guarantee the ability to cast something else. To be honest, the only reason I added that guarantee for a Maelstrom Weapon proc is because I wanted Earthstrike to feel different from Stormstrike. If there's a smarter or better way of accomplishing that difference, please do let me know. I don't just want these upgrades to be plain old buffs. I want them to be new and exciting, and just like getting new abilities when an expansion comes out, except without spellbar bloat becoming an issue. I wanted to add a multi-target weapon enhancement. Not one multi-target weapon enhancement has ever existed at any point in Shaman's history to the best of my knowledge. There's been Frostbrand weapon, Wind Fury weapon, Rockbiter weapon, Flame Tongue weapon, and Earth Living weapon, but none of those did multi-target damage. So I invented one. I'd be lying by omission if I didn't say I was starting to run low on ideas at the time I added it, though. I'd noticed that once in a while, Enhancement can run out of things to do, which is a problem. Frostfire Shock was meant to help deal with that. That's why I took the cooldown off of this upgrade for Frost Shock, though, again, I did want to call it Water Shock. But I also wanted to have Frostfire damage on something in Shaman's kits even more, so Frostfire Shock it is. It wouldn't surprise me if Elemental Shaman would start asking me to replace one of their 7 upgrades with Frostfire Shock, but I'm not sure which one they'd pick, or even how much they'd care. It would have pretty good synergy with Magma Shock, though. I'm getting off topic. Anyhow, Frostmend is an upgrade that I had in the Elemental upgrade spread, and while that one provided Maelstrom when you cast it, this version provides Maelstrom weapon stacks. And I made this version instant cast. If that plus 2 Maelstrom weapon stacks is too much, please do let me know. Also, one of the things I had thought of was taking an existing cooldown and replacing it with the old Shamanistic Rage ability, but that maybe I should upgrade a heal thought occurred to me and I dropped that Shamanistic Rage idea, but who knows? I might get feedback saying Shamanistic Rage should be out and out unpruned. Unpruning abilities or doing other tweaks like those can and has been part and parcel with these proposals. Like my Holy Paladin proposal with Denounce and Holy Radiance unpruned, for example. Boy, I miss those. So much so, it's hard for me to make a video without commenting on how much I miss them. Now, when I started out with these upgrade concepts, I went ability by ability, not purpose by purpose, if you see what I mean. I asked myself, which abilities exist in this specs kit that I can give an upgrade to? And when I created upgrades based on which abilities I could upgrade, I often aimed for something that I thought looked or sounded cool. Almost always I wanted the upgraded ability to feel at least a little bit different from the original. Often I tried to create some kind of trade-off, making the upgrade situationally useful based on things like the number of targets affected or having a stronger effect with a longer cooldown, things like that. Rarely did I upgrade the same ability more than once for the same spec, but while I was putting together each spread of upgrades, what I didn't do, and what I probably should have done in retrospect, was to figure out what goals a player would have while they're looking at a list of upgrades, and then make sure upgrades exist in the spread that allow the player to pick upgrades that help them achieve those goals. In my next iteration, I plan to have that design goal in mind, to consider what the player wants to accomplish and how they could accomplish it with the upgrades. I strongly suspect that in this next iteration, there will be a lot more cases where I upgrade the same ability in 2 or more different ways. That will give players more options, and since that's going to be the goal with goal-oriented design, who knows? I might even have 3 different upgrades for the same ability in the end. However, I can do this much more effectively in an environment that has a great deal of feedback available, and that's where you come in. You have knowledge that comes from experience with these specs. I don't. I tried to do my research on Wowhead and Icy Veins for each spec, but inevitably there'll be things you know that I don't because you have experience that I don't have. You'll have more and better ideas than I could hope to have, and I know I need those, so please, let me know what you think of these upgrades and what better ideas you have for what to put in their places. Now, when I get to the middle of each of these videos, I like to have a section where I examine how well I did with the spread as a whole by asking, if I were a player of this spec and wanted to use these upgrades to buff my single target throughput or multi-target throughput, how could I use the upgrades to do so? And if I find that there are less than 2 or 3 upgrades that fulfill that purpose, I think I've failed. And I start talking about what kinds of things I can do to fix that failure in iteration 2. I still plan to do that here, but I also want to think out loud about what kinds of things could be visually impressive or get players excited. I mean, Firestorm Shock looks pretty exciting, and like it'll be much desired in multi-target situations. And if Blizzard took that idea and didn't make it visually impressive in its animation, well, that would be a real problem. Some of these are definitely more exciting than others. Lightning Shock and especially Frostfire Shock look promising. Maybe Earthstrike, depending on how attached to Chain Lightning you are, Lightning Bolt Volley might qualify too, but Tide Rush Weapon? It helps situationally to be sure, but exciting it ain't. I guess it's okay if some upgrades are a lot more exciting than others. I mean, if every upgrade were exciting... If every upgrade were exciting, that would be awesome, wouldn't it? I mean, you'd have to choose which 4 exciting things to not have at any given time, but since you can change which 4 it is anytime you're out of combat, it's not so bad. I think I just talked myself into seeing room for improvement where I hadn't seen it before, and even crazier, I did so while attempting to make the argument that it's okay for some of these upgrades to be useful but unexciting. Anyhow, let's go back to the standard thing and evaluate the spread of upgrades based on purpose. Single target damage has Frostfire Shock, Lightning Shock, and Earthstrike. Multi-target damage has Lightning Bolt Volley, Tide Rush Weapon, and Firestorm Shock. So actually, there's things you can find useful for sure, if not always exciting, and depending on the situation, Earthstrike might even be an upgrade for multi-target if Chain Lightning is a huge contributor of multi-target damage. There's a lot of different flavor in these upgrades too. There's storm, earth, water, ice, and fire all represented. Of course, I was about to say that how much fun it is should be first and foremost in how anything in the game gets designed, and that rule should be more important than whether the abilities have a variety of damage types. And that is true. Fun should be the most important thing. But isn't the variety and flavor of the Shaman kit part of the fun? Maybe so. I've done an awful lot of talking and thinking out loud. The people whose opinions really matter are the actual Enhancement Shaman players who are watching this. Please leave me your feedback and let me know what you think, and whether you have more exciting ideas than what I have. That aren't overpowered, of course. Of course, I know Blizzard probably won't take many, or even any of these suggestions. Heck, they might even have something objectively better in store for us than the semi-borrowed power upgrade system that I've cooked up here. But knowing what gets players excited will be helpful to them even so. That is why I'm sacrificing so much of my free time and energy on Project Decade. And who knows, they might just need these ideas to get WoW going in the right direction. Heck, if this video series just gets the Blizzard developers into the habit of creating a blue post with the thinking in it that goes in depth enough for us to understand what they're doing and what their design goals are, then that would be a huge step forward. Even saying the thinking out loud is sometimes enough to get you a new perspective on what you're doing. Is it really what people want? Does it serve the purposes that it really should be serving in the end? Am I really doing something just to make a system look awesome instead of making the game overall better? What does it do for the fun factor? Am I making the mistake of prioritizing my design goals over the fun factor? Are my design goals the right design goals to have? Do my ideas match the spec's feel and flavor? Is it a net gain? Is it genuinely awesome? Things like that. Plus, we just plain need more communication from Blizzard. If Project Decade gets the development team into the habit of telling us the thinking for every change they make, then the whole project will have been worth it, even if they don't take a single suggestion. Again, if you see something you don't like bad trade-offs or something you know is counterproductive or useless, or if you've thought of an idea that's better or cooler or more useful than mine, then don't hesitate to let me know. The more details you can provide about why you don't like it and what makes one of my ideas counterproductive or useless, or about why your idea is cooler or more useful than mine, the better. One of the main goals of Project Decade is to give whoever's in charge of class design and player power systems a good idea what appeals to players and what'll actually get them excited to get back to WoW again. And the more you can say about the wherefore and the why, the better. I fully intend to iterate on this project and make changes in response to feedback. I know I'm going to make mistakes. Heck, I've already seen mistakes in some of the things that I've done. But if those mistakes generate the kind of discussion that Blizzard needs to hear, so much the better. Blizzard needs to see player engagement, humility, and feedback actually making change in action so they can start doing what needs to be done to turn WoW around. It can be done and it should be done. World of Warcraft can last another decade. So keep the feedback coming, folks. There's one last thing. I began working on Project Decade videos back in July, and considering how many months it has taken, the fact that there are 36 different sets of feedback to curate and compile, and multitudes of decisions to make based on feedback received, ideas others have come up with, and how to weave everything together into a fun, functional, and exciting whole, I don't have a chance in the tramaculum of getting this done in any reasonable length of time unless I get volunteers to help me curate and compile the feedback I'm getting. If you're willing to help curate feedback, please let me know. If I get enough interest, I will set up a Discord server where we can coordinate everything. Thank you in advance for your feedback and support. Let's make World of Warcraft the best game that it can be.